Confirmation hearing set for Tuesday. The DOJ investigation into the Fed's renovation project threatening to stand in his way. Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall has the latest. Hey, Tyler.
Hey, John. Good morning. Well, Kevin Warsh will be in front of the Senate Banking Committee as Senator Thom Tillis holds firm he will not vote to advance the nomination until the legal matter against Fed Chair Jerome Powell is resolved. And he really could make good on his threats. Republicans only hold a 13-11 majority. Now, I've heard it floated before that maybe Republicans would look to use a discharge petition to bypass procedure. But I have to say, I called up a few sources on Capitol Hill, and they are saying that that would be a lot easier said than done for a list of reasons, including that would likely require what's known as cloture being invoked, and that requires a 2/3 majority, which means Democrats would have to get on board. And at this point, they're not. In fact, we're seeing a last-minute push by Senate Democrats today to try to delay next week's testimony. Now, John, as you know, the Trump administration was offered a potential off-ramp here after a judge last month moved to block the subpoenas in this case. But even as we know that the legal bar is very high to remove a Federal Reserve official, the Department of Justice is still vowing to appeal that decision.
Tyler, thanks for breaking down the details. We've got the perfect guest to have this conversation. The Republican Congressman French Hill joins us around the table, also the chair of the House Financial Services Committee. Mr. Chairman, it's good to see you.
Great to be with you, and great to have you all three in Washington.
Thank you for hosting us. Thank you for hosting us, sir. Let's talk about this. I've asked so many people this question. I'll ask it you. Why isn't the president taking the off-ramp and getting his man confirmed at the Federal Reserve?
Well, it's what I recommend. I mean, I said back in January that I didn't think Jay Powell had done anything criminal, and that it was a distraction to have the DOJ do that investigation, which is, as I've said many times, doesn't exempt the Fed from criticism. I've had plenty of things that I think that Jay Powell or the Fed board should have done differently over the years. But it's time to move on from this. The petitions to the court have been rejected, and I think it's time to move on from the case and put our attention around getting Kevin Warsh confirmed by the United States Senate.
Do you think there's enough pressure right now in the White House for the president to take the off-ramp?
Well, I would hope so. You see this letter that you just had the reporting on from the Democrats, and Senator Tillis is still very committed to holding his support of the nomination until this is behind us. The House committee or the Senate committee can continue to look at the investigation of the building if they want to and that kind of thing. But when it comes to our oversight of monetary policy, our oversight of the Treasury market structure, the face of just doing our routine work and overseeing the Fed, I'd like to see the new chair confirmed and let President Trump have a new partner at the Fed. Let Treasury Secretary Bessent have a new partner in bank supervision and monetary policy. It's time, and I think it's important to move.
It feels like the president is doubling down. Maybe he doesn't want to lose face. So what could potentially be an off-ramp? I mean, he likes deals. Is potentially, I'm going to drop the DOJ case, but Jay Powell, you're not staying on till 2028?
Well, I think Chairman Powell is interested in seeing his replacement confirmed, and I think Chairman Powell is probably interested in going on to the next phase of his career and his life, quite frankly.
But you don't think he's staying on as governor?
Well, I think that depends on, according to Jay Powell, that's how he's inclined to stay on, according to Jay Powell, if Kevin's not confirmed and if this case is not dropped. So this is why I think if you're for the Trump administration and the Treasury moving on, having an economic policy that's in alignment, then I think it's in the president's interest to see the case move on, and let's go forward with the Trump administration's appointees at the Fed.
In the meantime, Rick Reeder of BlackRock was just on, and he was talking about how he would like to see whoever comes into the Fed next work with the federal government on initiatives to try to get mortgage rates lower, try to get benchmark rates lower on the long end as well, in order to keep affordability under check. What currently is in discussion on the House Financial Committee, given the fact that this has got a fiscal overtone as well as potentially a broad-based different agency initiative?
Well, I think the best way to make sure that takes place is to make sure inflation is well anchored, and I think we do that by taking steps on the supply side, to see that the big, beautiful bill from last year on the tax side is fully implemented. Let the Americans, both in business and at home in their households, reap the benefits of those important supply-side tax changes. And let's continue our work to right-size regulation. Those things would free up more capital to the housing sector particularly. 6 out of 10 home construction loans are not made by the biggest banks in the country. They're made by banks under $10 billion. And that's what I've had as a focus of the committee. Let's have a deregulatory supply-side housing bill, which the House has passed and we're negotiating with the Senate on. Let's continue our effort to put in law these tailored regulatory issues that allow our regional banks and community banks to thrive, because they're under the burden in a lot more significant way when it comes to capital levels, return on investment, than the biggest banks in the country are. Putting that into law, I think, does exactly that. It helps anchor inflation, moves capital into the economy, and I think that allows short-term rates to fall, and that in turn has a modest impact on pulling down that 10-year rate, which is so important as a benchmark.
Let's finish on financial services. What are you hearing about Mythos?
Yeah.
And how dangerous this might be? What's your understanding of things right now?
Well, the committee has, both Ranking Member Waters and I are concerned about that. We've actually asked the Treasury, for a brief there. We have noted the Treasury Secretary's engagement and the Fed with the largest financial institutions in the country. When I meet with the private sector, I hear from them that Claude is a very effective AI partner and that they've been most impressed with it, and that they want to get into a mode where they can see and determine any risks associated with the Mythos product. And that speaks to my philosophy about AI to begin with. We ought to let the compliance sector, meaning the supervisors, the regulators, and the private sector work in a sandbox type environment, sheltered from someone's network, to see what the impact of these large language models are, because they bring tremendous benefits to consumers, to business ahead of us. But they also have these risks, and we should make sure that all of our network operators have full understanding of it.
They're making some bold claims ahead of IPOs. They've got an interest to really hype this up over the next 12 months. It's hard to understand what's real and what isn't. In the 30 seconds we have left, do you foresee any hearings to get some of these CEOs in front of you guys and for the public to hear what's real and what isn't?
Well, we've started our hearings on AI, both from a regulatory compliance point of view, and we have done roundtables, meaning not public hearings yet, with the business sector, both the tech sector and the users, and I think you'll see us continue that work this year.
Mr. Congressman, thank you very much, sir. Good to see you, sir.
Washington.
As always, thank you. We'll be back soon. Congressman French Hill there on the latest in the financial services.